It's a grab and go. All this in City Beat.
The health of all Angelenos is the city's main concern during the pandemic. And now it's even easier to get tested as a new COVID-19 testing site has opened at Dodger Stadium. City officials say the new site will accommodate 3 times more people than any other site in LA County. And Mayor Garcetti says it is the largest site in the U.S. Sponsors now have the opportunity to be associated with the prestigious LA Football Club, as Bank of California has announced they are giving up the naming rights to the club's stadium in Exposition Park. LAFC and Bank of California jointly announced the restructuring of their long-term relationship, where the name will be changed, but Bank of California will remain LAFC's primary banking partner. In the continued fight against COVID-19, Homeboy Industries and Shared Harvest Foundation's My COVID MD initiative partnered to provide tests and screenings to local residents. Licensed medical professionals use the rapid pinprick COVID-19 IgM and IgG antibodies test to examine those who attended at the iconic Chinatown location. Granada Hills Charter High School is offering free grab-and-go meals for students, community youth, and children. The breakfast and lunch distributions will be held weekdays from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. For more information, contact cafeteria@ghctk12.com.
Residents in East LA can now come out and support their local growers. The much-awaited East LA Farmers Market is opening, but with social distancing guidelines, so growers and attendees are shopping safely.
East LA Farmers Market has been here in the community for quite a while now. The market was always a very vibrant and dynamic place for people to visit, come to the park, visit the market. During these times, it's been a little tough. You know, our farmers are losing some markets, they're losing some of the business they typically had. And so we were a little concerned about that, but in the last month, the market has actually been doing very well.
It's much cheaper than grocery stores. They're not overpricing you for like a box of strawberries. And it's actually fun too to experience, like interact with other people too.
We feel safer wearing the mask, wearing the gloves, and at least doing our part to stay 6 feet apart from people.
We follow LA County guidelines as well as the agriculture guidelines. We've been practicing social distancing. We've been doing a 1 entry, 1 exit walkway. We've been having hand washing stations. We just want to create a safe atmosphere and to create a healthy environment for people to come out and shop and feel comfortable and safe.
I understand. I mean, I've been pretty much indoors since March, and I know that people can get frustrated, but I think it's a necessary thing to do.
The ability for people to get out and get some fresh air in a safe and healthy environment. We're really proud of what we're doing here, and we hope you can come out and support the farmers market.
Sometimes we take for granted the feeling of putting on a clean shirt. Laundry Truck of LA is helping our community by providing free laundry services to members of Council District 1.
Today we are at Downey Rec Center with our weekly partnership with the LA Laundry Truck, where we provide mobile laundry to our augmented recreation centers being used as homeless shelter sites during this COVID-19 pandemic.
As you can see, the truck back there, we serve this shelter every Thursday, as we do other shelters as well during the week.
Those of us who don't have money or ways to have their things clean, the laundry service shows up and you can get the stuff back the same day. That's pretty big.
We went from 2 days a week to adding 3 days to now being 5 days a week to provide this important public health hygiene service during this COVID-19 pandemic.
SoCalGas jumped in recently and, said that they wanted to get involved and how could they help, so they helped us get a second truck.
The importance of having hygienic services available to people that are unhoused is extremely critical as a way to not only increase their public welfare, but also to reduce the spread of the coronavirus.
I have no complaints. I suggest anyone that is still out there searching, I suggest they consider this place.
The city, the county, everybody's been a huge support, and everybody realizes the great need.
The St. John's Well Child and Family Center has opened up a mobile testing site for COVID-19 in CD8, adding a new location for testing in the city of LA.
Yes, what we are doing here today is to test our community members for COVID-19. St. Bridget's Church is the center of this community, and we are always interested in whatever is going on in the community that will benefit the people who live here in South Los Angeles.
We heard about the great work that St. John has been doing throughout this entire time during this crisis, and we really decided that it would be a great partnership to work with them and really be strategic about where we could host these testing sites as a way to provide and bring this service to the folks that really need it.
We have our different clinics everywhere, but we still have these mobiles that we take inside the communities to make sure that all the people that need to be tested get tested.
We are able to test everybody. We only have one exception. We could not touch Kaiser patients. Kaiser Permanente is very proprietary about their own membership. So they've instructed us to refer their patients back to Kaiser Permanente for testing. But we could test anybody else, uninsured and any other type of insurance that people have, we're able to test them.
To be able to provide this service to a community that I care about is a tremendous feeling that I don't take for granted. And again, I'm very grateful for that opportunity, and I just hope folks will take advantage of it and see the value of this service and continue to spread the word.
The Black Hollywood Education and Resource Center answers the needs of unhoused Angelenos by having a blanket drive. The temperatures might be hot outside, but as BHERC shows us, it's never too hot to make a good gesture.
We are here to assist in the efforts of getting blankets for the homeless.
Last weekend we were out, we fed 400 homeless individuals, and many of them asked us for blankets.
Today we are participating in this drive to give out blankets to the homeless next weekend.
And so far the response has been overwhelming.
You're doing a phenomenal job, and I just wanted to do a little bit to help you. I know mine's just a drop in the bucket, but it was just something I wanted to do.
Oh, thank you.
My son is out here visiting for the Memorial Day weekend, and I wanted him to see what giving back was like.
I'm happy to help the homeless out. I've been wanting to do that for a while.
This pandemic is impacting all of us, but it's creating more homelessness, unfortunately.
I know what it's like to be on the receiving side of help, so I want to be able to be a part of a beautiful team that is helping to provide for those in need.
It's important that we remember those who are far too often forgotten.
Thanks so much.
You're very welcome.
Okay, bye.
I'm thanking God for what she's about, and I want to make it known for the community. She's doing a good work.
Our nonprofits right now, the nonprofit system is overstretched. And so I think we as individuals, we've also got to rise to the occasion, help our nonprofits, and just do what we can from where we are.
Oh man, this is a major hookup. Thank you.
We encourage anybody who would like to help, they can go to our website at bherc.org. One family today donated 200 blankets. And we're up to close to 600 right now.
The way that you show gratitude is by giving of yourself. And so when efforts like this come along where you can donate your time or possibly some goods, you got to take advantage of it, man, because it's the best feeling in the world. You know it's directly affecting somebody else's life, and we all got to just put into that melting pot.
Our phones are pretty much our lifelines, but they do almost everything for us. And now with apps, they do even more. I got the opportunity to sit down with Dr. Tony Greco, the founder of the Get Help app. Check it out. For those Angelenos who are suffering from mental illness and addiction, the COVID-19 crisis has the potential for being especially challenging. But thanks to a relatively new phone application, getting treatment is now a whole lot easier. Our guest today is Dr. Tony Greco. He is a psychologist, and he's also founder of a company called Get Help that developed the app. Tell us why and how this application was designed and what it is designed to do.
As a clinical psychologist being out in the field trying to find help for people, it's very difficult to locate resources. And the real problem is that there is not a connective communication between all the different service providers that are out there that are trying to provide help to people, whether it's a sober living house or a treatment provider or a homeless shelter. And there's no way for them to communicate their availability in real time to all of the different people on the other end who are looking for those services. What Get Help does is connect these people together and create an ecosystem so that everybody can share their information and find information at the same time.
So how has this helped you in terms of understanding the needs of the community in developing, your app and continuing with the development of your app?
I thought as a psychologist, I thought that, I might be the only one that had problems finding an available bed, and that there were other people who might, know the secret, know the way around. And what we found through the initial pilot with the city of Los Angeles, the number one thing that they were asking for was, they were like, this is great, but what we really need is real-time bed availability. What we really need is to know if that shelter down the street has a bed available so that if we send them there, they're going to be able to get in.
Now tell us how you came up with this idea in the first place. I understand you had driven all the way out to Las Vegas to help a friend. Tell us that story.
Unfortunately, it started a lot longer ago than that. My mom and dad met in an AA meeting, and my mom didn't stay sober. So, I have been saying for a long time, I've been trying to get people into treatment since I was 7 years old. As a result of my parents' mental illness, I myself experienced homelessness at 15 years old, and then got help when I was 17. After graduate school, being a doctor in psychology, you get more phone calls, not less. And so now people were calling me, asking me for help. And a friend of mine that had 27 years sober relapsed and was in Las Vegas. And so I went out there and did an intervention and just thought, if I can just get her back to Los Angeles, that's where I know all my people. That's where I know my way around the system. I've been working in the field for 20 years at this point. And so I got her back to Los Angeles. And by the time we got back to LA, I'd called everyone that I knew. I said, hey, I have someone who relapsed, bipolar disorder, chronic pain, all of these other issues. And by the way, they don't have any money and no resources. So what I had to do as a psychologist was take her down to Mission Community Hospital. It was midnight, and tell the psychologist on duty everything that I knew he needed to hear to not let her leave, right? And I walked out of there, and by then it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and all I thought was, if this is what I'm going through, someone who has over 20 years experience, a doctorate in psychology, I've been in this space my entire life, what does everybody else go through? And I knew that something needed to be done, and so I got to work.
Thank you so much for your time and for everything that you do. Dr. Tony Greco, the founder of Get Help, the app. 2 evenings of Shakespeare. Connect with fellow crafters and rock out with the American Cancer Society. All this next on Virtual Things to Do.
Have a virtual night out on June 5th and 6th, enjoying Shakespeare's Twelfth Night in a modern verse translation by Allison Carey. This virtual performance stars members of Hero Theater, an LA acting ensemble that uses art to model and bring social progress. This is a 2-day online virtual workshop of a play culminating in a final presentation, read live. Did we mention it's completely free? Check out Twelfth Night, a virtual experience. Visit herotheater.org/12th-night-reading. Join the group Make It Work Crafts for the June Craftist Communal Hour. Share your projects with like-minded creators. Bring your current craft or start a new one. Enjoy a loose conversation structure during this monthly virtual hour. How-to questions and sharing knowledge are encouraged in this inclusive and non-judgmental environment. Who is this group for? anyone who finds it impossible to make time for crafts, anyone who wants creative community, makers of all sorts and levels. The June edition of The Craft is Communal Hour happens Sunday, June 7th. For more information, check out their listing on Eventbrite. It's time to rock out for a great cause. The American Cancer Society brings you Real Men Wear Pink, coming together on June 6th for a virtual DJ dance party. It's an online community campaign, an emergency response fundraiser to help ease the unprecedented need caused by COVID-19. Cancer won't stop, neither can we. Don't miss Real Men Wear Pink, Saturday, June 6th. For more details, visit their listing on Eventbrite. And that's a look at some virtual things to do.
That's it for this edition. I'm Saida Pagan. For all of us here at LA This Week, thanks for joining us. A reminder that you can catch us online at lacityview.org. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. See you next time for more LA This Week.
Good morning, members and members of the public. Welcome to the Los Angeles City Council. Today is Tuesday, June 2nd. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Blumenfield. Mr. Blumenfield? Bonin.
Bonin present.
Thank you. Buscaino.
Buscaino here.
Cedillo.
Cedillo present.
Harris Dawson.
Morning, Monica.
Harris Dawson. Weezer absent. Koretz.
Koretz present.
Krikorian.
Here.
Lee.
Present.
Martinez.
Present.
O'Farrell.
Present.
Price.
Present.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Rue.
Present.
Wesson.
Wesson here.
12 members present and a quorum, Madam President.
Blumenfield present.
13 members present, Madam President.
Okay, our first order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Buscaino moves and Mr. O'Farrell seconds. Next.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Krikorian moves and Ms. Rodriguez seconds. Next.
And Madam President, today is Tuesday and time for a flag salute.
Mr. Buscaino, can you please join us in our flag salute?
Uprise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Members, before we run through the agenda, I just really have a need just to say a few words, and I promise not to be very long. I think we can all say that we're extremely exhausted over the recent events that we've all experienced in our districts and throughout our city this weekend. I've got to just speak personally on what I witnessed in my district yesterday. I know several of you also experienced similar events over the weekend, but I have to say I was out there earlier in the morning when people began to congregate to peacefully protest in the community of Van Nuys. And shortly after that peaceful demonstration turned into something violent and quite frankly, really, really disturbing. Van Nuys, as well as you know, some of us, most of you, if not all, have visited this community. We meet there on a quarterly basis to conduct business at Van Nuys City Hall. You've seen me talk about this community because it's part of my home and I grew up there. Delano, which is a street down from City Hall, is where my mother lived when she first came to this country. My mom's first job as a seamstress was on Irwin and Van Nuys. So as a little girl, I remember walking up and down Van Nuys Boulevard because that's where my mother worked. What I saw yesterday was absolute anarchy. Van Nuys continues to be a community that continues to struggle. It's a community that is predominantly working poor. The businesses that these individuals decided to vandalize are businesses that probably weren't going to come back after COVID. The pharmacy that they looted is a lovely couple that has been there for years. I went out last night to survey the damage and to help do some cleanup, and I just saw bottles of pills and oxycodone and amoxicillin all over the place, and that's why they were there for, to commit absolute destruction. I was on the news last night talking about what I had witnessed, but I remember the 92 civil unrest. I grew up in Pacoima, not too far away from where Rodney King was beaten. And I was in high school when that happened, but a year later I had graduated. And I remember what it was like and what it felt like to have those police officers be acquitted. But I also remember that the community where this happened also came together and made sure that we all felt safe. I remember feeling scared. My parents were terrified. My father was still working, and I think I've told you the story of my father not being able to drive and would take the bus to work. And we were terrified that my father would somehow not make it home that night. But more importantly, I think the community was afraid that they would burn down our neighborhood stores, that the grocery store down the street where we went shopping wasn't going to be there the next day, and so how were we going to be able to basically help feed our families and make sure people had the necessary needs to get by. So I'm very familiar with what it feels like to be scared and to feel like you have no power, to feel like you can't necessarily trust authority. But 28 years later, we have to do better. What we've witnessed and the fear in people and the reason why people were taken to the streets, that's all valid. The anger, the despair, the frustration that the system continues to be broken, that's all fair. I didn't grow up feeling safe in my neighborhood. I didn't necessarily grow up trusting the authority or the police department. But we have to do better. I thought about canceling this meeting today. Thought about it all day yesterday because I wasn't sure what some of us have to stay back and deal with what's going to happen in our districts if these demonstrations continue. But the backlash that I experienced 2 months ago is not something that I wanted to put this council through again. People who have this misinformation or this misconception about what we do as elected officials, I did not want to subject you to that again. So I thank you so much for being here, for being dedicated public servants, for reaching out to me yesterday, concerned not only about my district, but about the well-being of the rest of the city. So we're here to do the city's business. But Mr. Krikorian, I want to turn it to you shortly because I want you to help explain to the public what our budget process is. Because not only have I endured personal attacks on me and my family for the past 2 months, but I've also seen the dissemination of misinformation about what we're intended to do here today, what the meaning of this budget is, and why we decided not to take a vote in May to whether adopt this budget or not. We took a stand and committed to scheduling additional budget hearings for the month of June to be able to have a deep dialogue about what our priorities are. We are all committed to doing that. We said that over and over again, but yet we continue to see this misinformation on social media. And Mr. Krikorian, I'm very worried about our safety too, because I think these attacks by people who either do not understand how our system works or people who are they just intend to continue to provide misinformation and continue the personal attacks is not getting us anywhere. There's an absolute commitment from this council to continue the dialogue. There's a commitment from me to establish this ad hoc committee to look at the $700 million of COVID relief money that we're going to get from the federal government and how we're going to use that to actually help people, particularly those communities who have been disenfranchised for decades. And to make sure that what happened in 2008 does not happen again, where we continue to bail out corporations and not people. That's been the commitment over and over again. So, Mr. Krikorian, I would like for you to, sir, and don't want to put you on the spot, but I really need you to help folks understand what our process is, what our intent was, and what we plan to do moving forward as of today. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And first of all, I think on behalf of all of the council and the city of Los Angeles, thank you for those very moving and very important opening comments. I know that all of us share the reaction that you've had to the events of the weekend, and all of us appreciate very much your comments and your leadership in that respect. With regard to the budget, you are completely right that the social media world has been lit afire with rampant misinformation about the impact of both the mayor's proposed budget and the purported deadline of June 1st. And so I want to talk primarily about process, because we'll be having much more thorough discussion about substance during the course of the budget hearings. But this was, I've been budget chair now for 8 years. And in every single one of those years, we have taken an extraordinarily thorough process of reviewing the mayor's proposed budget. We have held dozens of hearings. We've heard from every general manager of every department in the city. We've scoured their budgets in detail. We have invited labor to the table to participate in those discussions. We have invited the neighborhood councils of every neighborhood council in this city through their budget advocates to come to the table and talk to us about their input into the budget. We have heard every year from literally hundreds and hundreds of members of the public who come to our meetings to participate in this and provide their input about what the priorities of this city should be as they're reflected in our budget. That's always been our process, a process of thoroughness, of transparency, of engagement, every single year. Now, this year has been an extraordinary exception, because this year is an extraordinary time that none of us have ever experienced. So the COVID-19 pandemic made it impossible for us to go through that process on the same schedule that we normally would. It does not at all mean that we will not continue to engage in that process, because we will. And it's my commitment as budget chair that we will continue to have the same thorough review of our budget, of the proposed budget by the mayor, and we will continue to make the changes that we always do in that budget this year, despite the extraordinary nature of this year. I will say also that this is an extraordinary year, not just because of the distancing requirements, but because of the tremendous challenge that this city is going to have in predicting its revenue streams for the coming fiscal year. We usually are able to model that and predict what revenues we'll have with a pretty high degree of precision. This year, that is impossible because we simply don't know what lingering impacts there are going to be from declines in sales tax revenue and property tax revenue and hotel tax and all of the other revenue streams that we have, most of which are very economically sensitive. So we don't have an ability to model for a situation in which the city's businesses have been closed for months and many will never come back. And we certainly don't have an ability to model that situation and then layer on top of it a situation where businesses throughout the city have been destroyed from civil unrest and crime as well. So we don't have the ability to do that, which means that the budget process is going to necessarily be fluid and ongoing. Now, it always is. In every other year, it has been similarly fluid and ongoing because the council always retains the authority to change the budget throughout the budget year. Right up until the end of the budget year, we're still making changes based on revenue changes and expense changes and other factors. So people who think that this is a one-shot deal, a one-and-done review by the council, and then it's finished, are just wrong. Now, by operation of charter, as I explained multiple times during council meetings, and apparently if I didn't do it thoroughly or clearly enough, I apologize. But let me say it again. By operation of charter, if the council does not make changes and approve its own recommendations about the mayor's budget by June 1st, then yes, that budget becomes effective at the beginning of the fiscal year. But we will continue to work as a council throughout June to make revisions in that proposal prior to it taking effect on July 1st. So this council has the complete ability to continue to work throughout June to make changes in that budget, to consider all of the various
Mr. Krikorian, I'm going to stop you because I think we just lost connection with you. Hold on for just a second. Go ahead and try again. Can you hear us, Mr. Krikorian?
I can.
There you
yes.
go.
Can you hear
you're
me?
Back. You're back, sir.
Okay. Don't know where I left off, but I was saying that both between now and July 1st, for the remainder of this fiscal year, we will work every week to revise the mayor's budget and to make proposals for consideration by this council. After July 1st, after the effective date of the new budget in the beginning of the new fiscal year, we will continue to make recommendations for changes in that budget on a regular basis to this council. And I hope that the public that has become newly engaged in the budget process will continue to be a part of that dialogue throughout. I hope that people will engage in serious discussions about the city's expenditures and what it means to cut expenditures in a certain department, what we need to add to. I hope that the public will be engaged in understanding the limitations on what the city does compared to what the county does, compared to what the state government does, compared to what the school district does, and the federal government. Because just because people are aware of our process does not mean that the city government is the one and only place that social services are delivered. In fact, we're probably the least relevant level of government to delivering the kinds of fundamental change that this society needs around education and healthcare and so many of the other areas that are just not within the realm of city government to do. Those are done by other agencies of government. So I hope the public will continue to be involved in that dialogue as well, so that together we can go to those other areas of government and demand the resources that this city needs to be able to deliver those things. So and you have my commitment, Madam President, members of the public have the commitment that this Budget and Finance Committee will continue to work vigorously throughout June on this proposal and throughout the coming budget year as well. And we will take seriously the proposals that are being put forth by members of the public, by community groups, by advocacy organizations, as we always do every single year, without exception. We have taken that kind of input seriously, and sometimes we're able to do the things that are requested, sometimes we're not. But we do take it seriously and we do consider it. One thing we won't be doing is we won't be budgeting by hashtag. This committee does thorough analysis, and we will do thorough analysis and consideration of real world impacts, just like we do every year. And I want to take a moment before I close, Madam President, to just thank the members of the Budget and Finance Committee, Councilmember Price, Councilmember Bonin, Councilmember Kretz, and Councilmember Blumenfield, because we take this work exceptionally seriously. And we always have, we will again this year. And I think that the degree of public input that we've had is a positive thing, and I hope it will continue so that working together, we can craft a budget that appropriately reflects the values of all of the people of Los Angeles.
Thank you, Mr. Gregorian. And I know, Mr. Cedillo, you want to speak. I do want to end with this, and thank you very much for explaining what the process is going to be and our commitment to continue to have a dialogue on this budget. I want to end with one more thing. You know, our words carry a lot of weight, and I know sometimes it's difficult for us to communicate everything we want to say on social media because, quite frankly, sometimes it's scary. The feedback is not always positive, and it's very difficult to sometimes channel what you want to say in a constructive way. But I want to end with this. I welcome the peaceful demonstrations on the street. Those need to happen. What I do not welcome, and what I saw in my district particularly, is an element that is coming in and hijacking this movement and hijacking these peaceful demonstrations. There is a huge difference. And I believe personally we have got to call that out. Who they are, where they're coming from, and quite frankly, call them out for what they are. This is the element that is destroying the reason why we're all so enraged about what happened and continues to happen to Black men in this country. And so I just want to make sure that we understand, and we have a duty to make sure that we work with our communities to weed out that element of negativity and make sure that these demonstrators that are doing things peacefully do not get hijacked by people who simply want to commit crime in our districts and in our communities. And I think that's what has me so frustrated this morning. I think for some of us who have been involved in movements in the past and continue to be, Mr. Cedillo, I talked to you last night about being arrested on behalf of hotel workers and janitors. Most of our lifetime we've been fighting for social justice and living wages for people who deserve to get paid a living wage in the city. That conversation and that dialogue needs to happen. But I also believe that we need to call out the people who are simply trying to hijack our movements and our causes and call it what it is, call it for what it is, and make sure that we support the right causes and not let these people hijack our movement anymore. Mr. Cedillo. Mr. Cedillo?
Madam Chair, thank you. Let me thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your discipline and for bringing us together this morning. It could be and would have been expected if we had canceled the meeting, given all our attention that's needed for our districts and for the city. And so I thank you for bringing us together this morning. I want to publicly thank Herb Wesson for his comments at the end of our last meeting. They were so profound and so spot on. They reflected not only the life of African-American men in this nation, but I and others in my community have grown up with the same type of notice by our parents and our families about our interactions with the law enforcement community. And so I want to thank him for that. I want to differ with you for a bit. And I want to say that the activities of yesterday and what we've seen the last few days is anarchy is to be very generous to the looters and very offensive to the anarchists. What we saw and have seen, if we parse it out, is there are peaceful protests, which we of course support. There is a righteous cause, which we of course support. You and I talked about this last night. Your history is rich in that tradition. But as I said last week, the council's history is very rich in its struggle for social justice in the city, in the state, in this nation. So it's being kind to looters to say that they are anarchists. They are not. They are looters. They are what we used to call the lumpen proletariat. They are exploiting this moment and this circumstance. And they're not just stealing products from local stores, but they're stealing jobs. Those 88 buildings that were destroyed on Melrose reflect jobs that working men and women do. They reflect jobs that immigrants do late at night when nobody else sees them, cleaning those buildings. They reflect the retail jobs that provide training so that then those people who work there can move up in those industries. They reflect a location where the sewers in downtown Los Angeles or the ones in Van Nuys, like your mother, the ones in downtown LA, like my mother, those products that they make are sold in those buildings on Melrose. And so when they burn down those buildings, they're not anarchists. They're more what we would say lumpen proletariats. They're looters. And so they're stealing not just jobs, but they're stealing hope from our communities. And in addition to that, particularly this city with so many immigrants, they're stealing hope and opportunity. But they're also probably the most egregious thing that they're doing is that they're stealing attention away from the righteous cause of violence against Black men in this nation and police brutality. They're taking attention and time away from that. They're taking attention and time away from COVID-19 and what needs to be done to rebuild our city and our economy. And in doing that, they don't realize that they're also creating unintended consequences. For example, in the middle of all this, if you paid attention, the president yesterday essentially announced a state of siege. He had this big theatric presentation yesterday where they attacked peaceful demonstrators, and they had a show of force, a show of, in his lingo, domination of the streets. This is a very, very dangerous development. This is something that we all need to be very focused on and pay appropriate attention to. This was just short of a declaration of martial law. We need to be very careful about that. We need to be very disciplined during this time period. We need to know, what is it that we should be doing? What are the immediate things we should be doing? What should the president have called for yesterday? And I think immediately the first thing, if we weren't busy trying to sweep up the damages done in Santa Monica or Melrose, Van Nuys, throughout this city and this region, we immediately should all be together and calling for the arrest and the prosecution, the conviction of those who created this egregious crime, a crime seen throughout the world. We should be focused our attention on police reform, and we should be focused on aiding and healing those who are victims of police brutality. That's what we should be doing immediately. But we can't if we're taking a brush and cleaning up our neighborhoods. We should also be focused on stopping Donald Trump, because he has been a purveyor of this type of hate and division. He is not prepared for the presidency, nor has he ever been. And he is provoking this. But the danger of that is that he plays to not just his base, but to voters in suburbia America voters in Wisconsin or Pennsylvania or Michigan, those critical states. And we have to be very diligent, very disciplined, very careful, because we will end up with Donald Trump again. We need to be actually focused on what the work is of this city and of this nation, bridging the gap between the divide of wealth and poverty. That's what we need to be doing. We need to be focused on a comprehensive housing plan, on economic development, on creating public space, art, and culture for our city. That's the work of our council. And yet we can't do that if we are working with a brush, with a mop, with gloves on to pick up broken glass in each of our neighborhoods. And so that's what's being stolen from us by these so-called looters, by these, what we used to call lumpen proletariats, by these people who you have been generous to label anarchists, as if they had some coherent political strategy and perspective. They do not. They are a criminal element. They should not be glorified. They should not be worthy. They are not worthy of the attention they have taken away from both the cause of George Floyd and of the cause of the pursuit of dignity and peace and justice for the residents and the people that we are honored to serve here in this great city and for our great nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cedillo. Mr. Price.
First of all, condolences to those that lost property. My colleagues, we've had constituents who are suffering greatly. We certainly understand that, support that. I do want to give a shout out to the protesters who have been making, those who have been making an honest statement, a very visible statement, expressing concerns, understandable concerns, and have chosen to do it in a peaceful way. We want to stand by that. You know, my perspective is as a 69-year-old Black man here in America, and certainly here in Los Angeles. And over the years, you know, we've been told of many teachable moments that are supposed to advance us, it's supposed to help us move forward. And I think those teachable moments have been failing us. You know, I was in high school and college in those turbulent 60s. I certainly was a part of that anti-war, pro-Black process then. And we were told then, teachable moments. I was around for the riots in 65, and the riots, the uprising in 92. And again, those actions and the aftermath, we were told, those are teaching moments. We're gonna make things better. We're gonna make improvements. And it just never seemed to happen. I certainly mourn the long list of Black men and Black women who have been murdered over the years at the hands of police. I saw a startling figure that between 2013 and 2019, 99% of police who were involved in homicides, murder, frequently were not charged. Most recently, of course, we see the situation, the murder situation with George Floyd, and a real tragedy. Man begging for breath under the knee of someone who chose otherwise. But before him, you know, we had Michael Brown, shot by the police 6 times. Even more recent, Breonna Taylor, shot 8 times in Louisville, you know, on a no-knock warrant, a mistake, and she's gone. She's just gone. Members, I'm suggesting that we don't need any more teachable moments. We don't need any more teachable moments. We know what we have to do. We need to start doing some stuff. We need to address the systematic abuse and injustice that people are feeling. They're feeling it all around this country, including in LA, including in our neighborhoods. And so I'm just hopeful that we will learn from this, take from this, stop trying to quantify them as teaching moments, and let's get down to business and take some actions that are going to really make some change, make some impact, make differences in the lives of those individuals that we represent. Thank you, Madam President.
Mr. Krikorian? Mr. Koretz?
Thank you, Madam President. I think it goes without saying that we've all been devastated by what we saw in Minnesota and possibly the most horrendous death that any of us have ever seen. I think the shock and devastation of that is felt across the country and across the world. And so I've gotten criticized for expressing concern also about the devastation that we've seen in our own city in the aftermath. And people have said, why do you care? We're just harming property. Well, I would agree with my colleagues who said, we're not just harming property. We're destroying people's businesses and destroying people's lives at the same time. Mom and pop businesses in my district, many owned by immigrants, many owned by Black and brown individuals, have all been lost and are unlikely to be reopened in many cases. Jobs that are held by folks from across the city in my district, that jobs that were hanging by a thread and probably now that won't return. So I would argue that it's not just property. We've devastated a lot of lives, and we can't be expected to just sit by and say that that's okay. I appreciate the words of George Floyd's brother, Terrence Floyd, when he said, it's okay to be angry, but channel your anger to do something positive or make a change another way, because we've been down this road already. Anger damaging your hometown is not the way he'd want. And I believe that that's true. It's completely overshadowed the real issue of what happened in Minnesota and what that symbolizes and all the things we need to do to change society so that we don't see something like this ever happen again. But looting, the vandalism, and we're lucky in this city that it hasn't gotten worse than that. My concern has not just been about property, but that there could be injury and loss of life. We are very fortunate that that has not happened this time. But I think we need to, at our earliest opportunity, address all the issues that we know need to be addressed. And that this points out in Los Angeles and across the country, we really can't begin the work of healing and begin the work of addressing that until all the violence in the city is over. And I believe we should call for that, an end to the violence and the beginning of healing, the beginning of taking all the steps necessary to make sure we don't see another Minnesota, another George Floyd. And we hope that he will be the last symbolically and otherwise, and move us in the right direction as a society.
Mr. Bonin?
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, colleagues. We've talked a lot about all of the bad things that are happening out there, and many of us have acknowledged the power and the beauty of the legitimate protesters expressing their grievances. And I want to say a word of love and respect to those who are out there calling for change and doing it peacefully. I have been at or watched closely several of the demonstrations and the protests. And I have been struck by the youth. These are the youngest crowds I have ever seen at demonstrations. And these are young people, black, brown, white, who they're angry and they're frustrated over a number of things. There are teenagers and young adults there who have seen their fathers and their uncles and their mothers beaten or killed or harassed or falsely accused or imprisoned. These are young people who, growing up in LAUSD until very, very recently, were routinely stopped and frisked. These are young people who have not only seen their adult counterparts, but as they were growing up, saw their actual counterparts, Trayvon Martin or Tamir Rice or Brendan Glenn in Venice, killed. These are kids who, or young people who have grown up seeing their classmates, their counterparts in schools across the country gunned down and killed, and the government hasn't done much to respond to gun violence. These are young people who are growing up and facing crushing debt. And to LA's credit, we have done a lot with Free Community College, but crushing debt across this country, and they cannot even get their first step into adult life. These are young people who are growing up. They're going to live with the consequences of climate change. And they have seen their world and their future poisoned by racism and by violence and by a planet that is deteriorating. And they're just very impatient and they are very angry. And in the middle of this pandemic and in the middle of the witness of what happened to George Floyd, their anger and their impatience is even greater. And they are calling out for faster progress and demanding that we do things differently. And they're summoning us to do better. And I would like to do better myself. I think that this moment is on all of us, and I want to grow from this, and I want to learn from this, and I want to be better from this. And I hope that we, as a city, can, and that we have the opportunity to invest differently in the city of Los Angeles and the things that we fund and the things that we provide for. And it's a moment for that reflection. And I hope that we all meet it. Let's get past the ugly stuff that's happening out there and understand the power and the beauty of those who are righteously impatient. Thanks.
Mr. Harris Dawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for providing this time and providing the space for this conversation and discussion. And thank you for your words early on. And thank you for the communication that you've had with many of us during this weekend. As we saw one of the toughest times in the city of Los Angeles. I agree with the comments of all my colleagues and the spirit and intent of all my colleagues. And I'll try to keep my comments limited to things that I feel like I can particularly add to the discussion. This is a very hard time, and I'll just lay it bare. It's very hard every time I hear the notion that the loss of any business, the loss of any property can in any way take away or overshadow the death of a human being. The murder of a human being in cold blood in front of the eyes of the world. Events just don't take attention, people give them attention. And so if we decide that what we're gonna pay attention to is the damage in our city, and I get that's our job, that's what we gotta do. That's We're responsible for that. We're responsible for the safety and order in this city. We absolutely have to do it. But we're also human beings and we're part of the human family. And we get to decide what's most important. We do it all the time. People come with 1,000 things all the time to us, and we decide we're going to elevate that and we're going to de-elevate that. Every looter, every petty criminal should be hunted down and charged and jailed. But that's not an excuse at all to not make the center of our attention this dead person who got killed by 4 people, of which it took 3 days to arrest one of them, and 3 of them still haven't been arrested. And I thank Mr. Buscaino for calling for the arrest of those 4 officers, those other officers. You know, City of LA, we had arrested 500 people on Friday night, and Minnesota can't figure out how to arrest 3 people who are on film, right? So I just think the onus is on us to have discipline and to say, we're going to deal forthrightly and forcefully and swiftly with everybody who does damage to any property in this city. But also, we're going to face this question and face it head on. Because guess what? Minnesota isn't the only place unarmed Black men end up mysteriously dead as a result of interactions with the police. It's not the only place it happens. Happened right down the street from City Hall just a few months ago with a homeless person named Africa in a tent, an argument over a tent. He ends up dead at the hands of the police. So there are things we can do and there are things we need to do. And as much as I appreciate the concern and the love for our city and the insistence that that not be disruptive, none of us for a second can send the message that that's more important to us or it's equal to or even in the same ballpark as the loss of human life in cold blood in front of our eyes. I think when we look back on history, and I always encourage us to, and encourage everybody we work with, let's take the long view. Next week, I was just discussing with Mr. Bonin, next week, led by Mr. O'Farrell, we're gonna have a celebration of a police riot, where guess what? There was a bunch of rioting and there were a bunch of broken windows and there were a bunch of destroyed property because the police attacked a Black trans woman. And the gay community said, we're done, it's over, we're not discussing it anymore. I'm sure good people lost businesses and lots of injustices were done, but that's not how we talk about that time. We talk about that time as the time when the LGBT community said, we're done and we're not doing this anymore. And hopefully with our leadership and the leadership of so many other people, we can make this the time that we say, we're done. I appreciate Mr. Price's recitation of the history. I was taught about this in school. They taught me about Emmett Till in school as if Emmett Till and what happened to him was history. And here we are dealing with it again in 2020. I learned about that as a child. I'm now on the back end of my life and we're still dealing with it. And in this town, all of us, and I hold myself accountable for this, in all of this, we haven't put forward one serious proposal. Not one. And so I just think I call on all of us, be disciplined. Let's keep our eyes on the prize. Let's keep the long view of history. We absolutely have the capacity to hunt down and jail the criminals that are involved. And by the way, and I think Mr. Cedillo can validate me on this. He knows the history better than me. Typically these groups, anarchists, Antifa, all of them, what they're trying, their goal is to delegitimize the society. And one way you delegitimize the society is you get to say, look, they care more about windows than they do human life. So when we do that, we fall into their trap. We're delivering to them exactly what they want. Because if you see the footage, and we've all seen footage and we've shared it, the people who are breaking the windows, they're actually not the ones looting. They're just trying to cause disruption. They just want to open up a window, open up a store, cause people to go in, cause disruption, and change the topic, and then come back, and they'll do it. They're all over the internet doing it, and it's an old trick. I organized several marches. Every time we had a march, the groups weren't called Antifa then, but they were the same set of tactics. A lot of people get together. Let's disrupt the crowd. Let's cause confrontations with the police. Let's show that the police are not going to be peaceful and the police are going to use violence against peaceful protesters. And so the whole thing's a mess. You should throw it all out. And so you got to be careful. We all got to be careful when they are successful, which unfortunately they're being successful this weekend. When they're successful at drawing away attention, you don't let the attention stay there. You deal with them as the petty criminals that they are. You put them in jail and you move on and you deal with the real petition of the people. We got a problem with the lack of police accountability. We got the problem of the loss of life of Black men as a result of their interactions. And so, again, I appreciate and love what everybody has done this weekend. I think we've got some difficult days ahead, but I think we can get through it. But if I leave you with anything, let's keep our eyes on the prize. And that's a society where this kind of thing is ancient history and it stays in history books and not on newspaper front pages.
Thank you, Mr. Harris-Delson. Mr. O'Farrell? Mr. O'Farrell, are you there?
Thank you, Madam President. I want to start by thanking you for opening up the floor so we could give voice to all of this. And I have great respect for everything that I've heard all of my colleagues say so far. And you and I have talked about this as well. And I have been on so many marches and protests over the last 30 years, I can't even count them all. And one stands out, really looms large in my life that was sort of life-shaping, and that was the March on Washington on April 25th, 1993. And back then, it was simply called the Gay, Lesbian, and Bisexual Rights March because LGBTQ wasn't even in broad use at that point. That's how far along we've come in visibility within the LGBT community. As Mr. Harris-Dawson just said, the protest at the Stonewall Inn in August of 1969 on Christopher Street in New York City was led by an African-American transgendered woman. We have such a rich history and culture that is inclusive from the very beginning, even going back to the Black Cat protests in Silver Lake in New Year's 1967, when there was an uprising and a resistance because of a police raid, because two same-sex people had the audacity to kiss at the stroke of midnight, 1967. And the LGBT community had had enough. And then, of course, with Stonewall, that's what galvanized the entire country about becoming more visible and being out and demanding your rights. And from the very beginning, that's been inclusive. And that has always been an example for me. And I think that everyone who's spoken so far and all of us who will speak agree that there is a very clear distinction between the peaceful assemblies and righteous protests because of the murder of George Floyd by the police officer with his 3 accomplices, by the way, for the world to see. We all see that and we support. I saw friends of mine marching in Hollywood last night, and it warmed my heart to see that visual as I'm on the phone with Chief Arcos, who's offering protection so that the protesters can march peacefully and safely. The distinction between that right to peaceful assembly that is guaranteed by the First Amendment and our Bill of Rights is sacred. There's a huge distinction between that and those who would destroy. And we all get it. None of that's lost on any of us. And I think it's important for us to give voice to that. And what I also want to remind everyone is that this council has demonstrated leadership that no other city has done so far in terms of beginning to put the building blocks in place for policy that would actually result in resources and change with the Office of Racial Equity. And this was a vehicle through the Embrace LA initiative that was introduced by Herb and I 3 years ago. It culminated in several dinners across the city over a couple of years, and then a summit on poverty last fall, and the creation of the Office of Racial Equity. And we all are on board for that. That report was generated and was about to be introduced and heard in the in the Committee on Homelessness and Poverty. And it will be heard now because the report is ready, and that will provide a bit of a framework on how we can proceed with enacting fundamental real change in the way we apply resources to level the playing field. Through that Office of Racial Equity, one of those vehicles is the Community Racial Equity Advisory Committee, made up of residents of Los Angeles. I'm hopeful that everyone who is so completely devastated and outraged by the tragic circumstances that we're all trying to function under will get involved in that, because we are not a body unto our own. We are of the people, and we depend on the involvement of everyone across the city to move our government in the right direction, in a forward direction. So I just want to say to everyone who's listening that we are hearing you, we are listening. We can relate, and we are going to take action. And we understand the very, very clear distinction about those who are fighting for justice and full equality and those who are trying to destroy that message. We get it. And together we are going to bring that change. We have a lot of work to do. And Mr. Krikorian said it. And it's been said by everyone who's spoken so far. So I just want to, mention that when we work from our own lived experience, that can bring insights that can be shared with others. And it's always an exchange of information and ideas that are what lead to positive change and structural changes. So thank you so much, Madam President.
Mr. Rue?
Madam President? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, sorry, I had some technical difficulties, so I had to change to my iPhone. Thank you for allowing us to speak on this. And, as an immigrant and as someone growing up in the lower income neighborhoods and as a product of the 92 LA riots, this day is, what's happening is so devastating to me because my entire life, my entire commitment to public service, the whole reason why I came into public service and even ran for office was shaped because of what happened back in 92. And back then, I felt frustrated, alone, scared, helpless. So I said from then on, going forward, I am going to do everything humanly possible to make sure that never happens again. Coming from the Korean American community that was devastated back in 92, it was heart-wrenching. But at the same time, growing up in lower income neighborhoods, I knew that the manifestation of 92 was not what we saw on TV, but it was the history of poverty and social injustice, which is why I committed my life to it. And, and it's life comes full circle. I mean, Councilmember Marquise Harris Dawson, we both grew up out of the LA riots, and in many occasions afterwards, we participated and worked sometimes across the table, sometimes on the same side of the table, to make sure that this never happened again. And when I ran for council, I said, this will never happen again because our city will change. And, but this time around, I mean, it was a perfect storm. Even before all of this happened, we had a huge social injustice and divide of two Americas with homelessness. And then out of nowhere, this pandemic hit. Then if that wasn't bad enough, the trifecta hit with the murder of George Floyd. And, and I agree with a lot of my colleagues about how we need to make sure that this is not yet another wake-up call or yet another learning lesson. It's not just about the budget, but it is about systemic change. That's what I fought for when I was marching against immigration policy, for immigration reform policy. That's what I fought for the last redistricting cycle, when I wanted more independent redistricting to happen. This is what I fight for today. And I know we all agree, and I know we've had many conversations with all of our colleagues, but it's not just about fixing something here or fixing something there, because if we just do Mickey Mouse fixes, this is going to yet happen again. We need to go structural deep and have systemic change. And this systemic change is not just the city council can't do it alone. We need the people. We need everyone to come together to understand and work together so we can have the systemic change, so that we don't come back 10 years from now or 20 years from now and 30 years from now and say, oh, we didn't do enough back then. Because it's not just about a Christopher Commission. It's about changing the fundamental structures of our city government. So, and I see this is that opportunity. I know a lot of my colleagues have mentioned it today and throughout the week. This is that opportunity for us to really, truly make that difference. So I thank you, Council President, for giving us time to speak on this. And I look forward to all the great works we're all going to work on together.
Mr. Weston?
Thank you, Madam President and members. I appreciate this opportunity to just say a few words. This country that we love, has never atoned for its greatest sin. And its greatest sin was slavery. That's when this started. That's when people viewed Black people as property. That's when they said things like, they need to eat, but they don't have to eat good food. They need to have a place to stay, but they don't have to stay in a good place. They need to work, but they don't need to earn as much money as everybody else. The greatest sin that this country has ever committed. I grew up differently. And what I'd like to see change is that everybody is afforded the opportunity to grow up the same. It's not right when you're a young man trying to get your first job and your grandparents tell you because you're Black, you have to go to work 15 minutes early before everybody else, and you got to stay 15 minutes later than everybody else. That's not right. And what you're seeing out on the streets throughout this country today are good people that are more than angry, that are more than frustrated. They are in pain. And they are saying, this ain't right, and we're not going to deal with it anymore. Not like this. It is unfair of us to suggest that the only group of individuals that kill Black men are the police departments throughout this country. Black men are killed by a failed public health system that doesn't provide them with the type of treatment that we've deserved from the moment that we were born. They are failed by an economic and employment system that does not give them or us the opportunities to succeed like everybody else. I have been watching the television like each and every one of you. And from Florida to the state of Washington, and from California to New York, people are rising up and demanding change. And it is the responsibility of us as lawmakers to begin to put in place the laws that can affect that change. I have indicated on this council for the past 15 years that I've sat on it, that the winds in this country blow from the west to the east, and that we have a responsibility to set the tone, set the table for the rest of this country. I view this moment, with all of the people all over the world crying out for equality, that this is a moment that provides us with the opportunity to literally change this nation. So there's going to be a series of recommendations that Mr. Harris Dawson, Mr. Price, and hopefully some of the other members of this council will put forth that will set the table for change. Like today, we're going to be introducing a motion that declares racism a public health crisis. And we're going to ask that the city of LA internally put in place values that core values where it relates to people being judged by their deeds and their actions. And if there are any racist situations within the city of LA, we have a responsibility to fix it quickly, because we are the example for the rest of the world. This is a time where we cannot let the death of George Floyd just fall on deaf ears. We've got to honor and take advantage of his sacrifice to protect the George Floyds of today, the thousands of George Floyds of the past, and more importantly, all of the George Floyds of the future. And that's your son, Michael. That's your son, Bob Blumenfield. Because when they go out into this world, people aren't going to say, oh, this is a young man that was raised by two progressive gay guys. No, they're going to say he's a black man. And the same thing when Bob's son goes out. The people want change. Let us do our part in giving them that change by giving them more than lip service, by actually putting in place the types of laws that protect them and demand that they be treated equally. And so in the next several days, anticipate that you will see these kinds of recommendations coming from us. Black people, Latino people, Asian people, we make up the majority of this city and this state. Asking for equality is not asking for anything that's special. We're just asking for what is just. So I truly believe that if we don't take advantage of this moment, a moment that was created for us by young people of all races, it could be the biggest mistake that we've ever done in our political careers. So let us change the criminal justice system. Let us change the public health system. Let us change the economic and employment system, and let us begin to do that today. Again, Madam President, thank you for affording all of us an opportunity to express ourselves during this very, very critical time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Blumenfield?
Okay. Madam President, thank you so much for creating this space. And all the speakers before me, I just completely agree with the sentiment and the words of each of you. And I also want to echo my colleagues' call for peace, an end to the looting, an end to the violence, but an end to all of the violence, especially the violence against Black men and women that we have seen. We need to acknowledge that the rage that we have seen in the streets throughout this country is a righteous rage. The murder of George Floyd and the many other people of color, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, all of the folks, is unconscionable. And they reflect the racism and fundamental failures of our institutions. And as Mr. Wesson pointed out, these institutions are not just our police institutions. These are our healthcare institutions, our employment systems, and much more. The first step is acknowledging that. And I know that we all here acknowledge that. The country doesn't necessarily acknowledge that yet, but we need to make sure that they do. The next step is justice, in terms of making sure that the officers involved in this particular shooting are charged, but also making a system of justice and accountability for these types of incidents. And then the real step is change. Change is what's needed. You know, Mr. O'Farrell talked about the Office of Racial Equity. We recently created a Department of Civil Rights. The mission of that department and these institutions is more urgent than ever. But the mission is also ours as a council. And I hope that we move forward not just to eliminating discrimination and trying to get to some sort of equilibrium, but that we move and create as a North Star our city becoming an anti-racist city. And that becomes our North Star. Because we know that it's not just about preventing discrimination, it is being actively anti-racist. And I think that we can do that. We can lead. As Mr. Wesson said, these winds blow from the west to the east, and we have led on many different issues, and we are already leading in many ways, but we can do more. We will do more, and I look forward to joining my colleagues in creating a whole number of initiatives to meet this moment. Because it is the challenge is there, the gauntlet is thrown down, and we need to answer the call. Thank you.
Mr. Lee?
Thank you, Madam President. You know, I share the sentiment of my colleagues today. What happened, obviously, to George Floyd, I think is something we all agree is something we need to address in our society. I wanted to sort of restate what my colleague, Ms. Harris Dawson said, that while these acts of crime do nothing to further the cause, and is something that I think we all look on in horror, and when we see, you know, buildings being burnt down. I remember the '92 riots. I remember how it affected my family, having businesses in Koreatown, and, you know, my mom, you know, saying at the time that she had nothing to do with it, and how it affected her forever going on. But that after this is all over, after, you know, the protesting stops, is that we make sure that we focus on what that message is. Why were they protesting? Why are people in the streets? And that we listen to really hear them, and the frustrations that, that they have with what's going on in the society, and that we work towards that. And I thought, I just want to thank Ms. Harris-Dawson, because I think that's a powerful message, that we focus, on those messages of why this is happening. Thank you, Madam President.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Thank you, Madam President. And I just, share the sentiments of my colleagues, and very simply want to say that, we are held to a standard, rightfully so, of making sure that our actions speak louder than our words. And I want to thank the members of this council and my colleagues for helping to lead by that example. And when Mr. Wesson so profoundly asked in his adjourning motion of George Floyd, who's going to fight for us? I say to you, Mr. Harris-Dawson, Mr. Price, and Mr. Wesson, and every young Black man in this country, I'm here to fight for you. This council is here to fight for you. And we are here to change the systems that have for so long held many back. And so I want to let you all know that I stand in solidarity with you, and for the voice of those that are protesting peacefully on the streets of Los Angeles and across this country. But the work ahead is before us, and we must get to that work immediately and continue the work that has been exemplified here in Los Angeles. And so I want to thank you for your examples of leadership, colleagues, and I look forward to us continuing that work here in the days and weeks ahead.
Mr. Buscaino?
Thank you, Madam President and members. Madam President, thank you for allowing us to speak on what's taking place, not only here in our city, but throughout this country. We started this meeting with our Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. And in those words, we cite, with liberty and justice for all. With liberty and justice for all. This is the same flag that gives us an opportunity to express our First Amendment rights. And we talk about justice. Mr. Marquise Harris-Dawson mentioned that justice means that those offending officers involved in the George Floyd incident are charged and arrested. We don't have peace in America because justice continues to be unequal in America. And justice means that this never happens again. I know a few of us were in high school in 1992 when we saw the uprising in South Los Angeles. I, for one, was practicing on the San Pedro High School baseball field, looking north and seeing the city in South Los Angeles in flames. I told myself that maybe one day I'd be able to serve the city as a police officer. 4 years later, I pinned a badge on my chest. At the time, my friends and family told me, "What are you thinking? Why do you want to join this police department? You're too honest, too good of a man. What the hell are you thinking?" And I told my friends and family that this is what we need. We need a police department that officers can show that heart behind the badge, that they can lead with love and compassion and serve residents and build that faith and trust in a police department and a community. Colleagues and those who are listening, this police department, I feel, is better and stronger because of the injustices and the dark days that this police department has had in the past. Fast forward to where we're at today. A consent decree has driven a police department that has been more strong, more inclusive, reforms that have been in place to address the injustices that have taken place between cops and communities of color. And I, for one, am proud to be in a police department while those reforms were being placed by the federal courts. I was in Watts yesterday, colleagues, with a number of incredible leaders. And we told ourselves that Watts experienced not one, but two uprisings, 65 and in 92. We're seeing this investment in South Los Angeles and in Watts, millions of dollars coming in through the state and federal government over the course of the last 4 years. We've seen a reduction in violent crime by 80% in Watts. LAPD officers today continuing to mentor young people in our community through our community safety partnerships. We have officers today who are part of this Watts Rams program, Southeast Division Cops, this football program that are mentoring our young men in Watts. Yes, we have come a long way from 1965 and 92, but we stand together in solidarity that we don't ever go backward again. And just be mindful that these changes didn't happen overnight. They were a product of thousands of hours of work by our community to make change and the perseverance of never giving up on that change. We have had to do decades of work to change our policing models in our city, and it's work that is never done, and we know that we can improve. And while these peaceful protests are being taken over by these violent criminals all over our region, we pray for the safety of our peaceful protesters, our officers, our residents. And we're seeing that. We even saw that in Mr. O'Farrell's district in Hollywood, where we're seeing protesters backing and pushing against the looters. So with that, members, we have work to do. And to her, I actually asked my staff yesterday to put in a resolution to call on racism being a public health crisis. And I'm glad that you and other colleagues are moving on that. In fact, as you know, our dear friend Matt Zone led that effort in the city of Cleveland. I'm supportive of that effort. I'd love to sign on to that effort and know that we stand together in solidarity in this body, this city, to stand up against the injustices that we're seeing not only here, but throughout this country. Thank you, Madam President.
And Mr. Cedillo to close.
Madam Chair, just let me tell you that I'm moved by all my colleagues' comments. I particularly like the attention to the youth, Mr. Bonin, because sometimes we don't really see what's in front of us, and I think you were right on point with respect to noting that this is our future generation. These are the next council members and the next senators and the next leaders of our communities, the next nonprofit leaders of our communities, and so I thank you for that. Madam Chair, I'm going to close. I just wanted to bring attention to what I had noted earlier, that there are people who have delivered bricks in the Northeast. We are aware of that. We are dealing with that, but I want us to be very clear publicly that they are not welcomed. This is not a place for them to come and think that they are going to destroy the social and cultural fabric that is part of Northeast Los Angeles. They are not welcomed, and they will be addressed and engaged appropriately. We will not allow these people to distract us from our challenge, to delegitimize all the righteous anger that is being manifested throughout our country. We will keep our eyes on the prize, and we will move forward. And so I thank you for giving us this moment to let the city know and this nation know that they have one of the more progressive city councils in the country, and that we remain firmly committed to moving our agenda forward for social justice, for dignity and respect for all our residents in the city. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Cedillo, and thank you for making our office aware of the situation in the North Los Angeles. And so we're currently working with your office to try to address the issue of folks who delivered bricks to your district earlier this morning. So hopefully that helps, sir.
Thank you.
All right, members, let's go ahead and run through the agenda. Madam Clerk?
Madam President, would council like all items to go forthwith today?
Without objection, that will be the order. What's next?
There has been a request from a council member to continue items 2 and 6 to Wednesday, June 3rd with an amendment to item 6. Would you like the member to state the amendment at this time?
No, we're going to run through, let's continue to run through the agenda and then we will do that. So items 2, there's been a request to continue item 2 and 6.
Correct.
Okay.
And then items 1 and 2 are items noticed for public hearing. Items 3 and 4 are items for which public hearings have been held. Items 5 through 18 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, without objection, those items are now before us. Members, at this time, let's go ahead and if you can just signal your virtual hand so I can call on you if you have any requests to call any of these items special or you have any amending motions to any of the items before us. Okay, Mr. Harris-Dawson?
Yes, I have a amending motion. I move that the matter of consideration and actions related to environmental impact report, communication from the city attorney, and ordinance first consideration relative to establishing the city market signage supplemental use district, item number 6 on today's council agenda, be amended to request the city attorney to prepare and present a revised ordinance which removes in its entirety section 10, violations and administrative penalties, civil penalties from the ordinance first consideration attached to the file, inasmuch as it is not applicable or applied to any existing supplemental use sign districts in the city, and those provisions will be contained in the proposed future citywide ordinance per the comments provided by the Department of Building and Safety in its Rule 38 letter.
Okay, I will second that for Mr. Harris-Dawson. That was on item 6. Are there any other specials or amending motions? Okay, seeing none. Madam Clerk, let's move on to the public comment section. Why don't you go ahead and read the call-in information that was provided for today's agenda.
Thank you, Madam President. As indicated on the agenda, members of the public wishing to offer public comment should call 669-254-5252 and use meeting ID number 160-535-8466 and then press pound. Then press pound again when prompted for participant ID. Let me repeat. Call 669-254-5252 and use meeting ID number 160-535-8466 and then press pound. Press pound again when prompted for participant ID.
Okay, Mr. City Attorney, go ahead and explain our speaking rules to members of the public.
Yes. Thank you, Madam President. To members of the public calling in, when it is your turn to speak, please state which of the agenda items you'd like to speak on. You have 1 minute per item to speak, up to 3 minutes total, and if you wish, 1 minute for general public comment. We will tell you when your time is up. When speaking on the agenda items, you must be on topic. Our goal is to get through as many speakers as we can, and if you're not speaking on topic, or if we cannot tell whether you're speaking on an agenda item, you will get one brief warning from me or the President. If you do not immediately get clearly on topic, or if you again stray off topic, the President will cut you off and you will forfeit the rest of your speaking time and we'll move on to the next speaker. We will take 45 minutes total public comment. Finally, for members of the public calling in to speak, as soon as you hear someone address you, you are live in the council meeting. If you're also listening to the council meeting on your computer, channel 35, or other device, please turn down the volume on those devices immediately. There's a time delay between the live meeting and the broadcast on those devices, and it will cause confusion if you continue to listen on your other devices. Thank you, Madam President.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the first caller.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on. Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on. Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
This is Rabia Sen, and I'm with Esperanza Community Housing. I'm here to provide general comment. You know us, we work in South Central on issues of environmental justice, affordable housing, tenant rights, rights for the unhoused, and immigrant rights. And frankly, we are tired of seeing the systemic disenfranchisement of and complete disregard for Black lives. We demand better from the city. To the council president and council member Krikorian's point about the process, thank you. We appreciate what you've shared about that. And we're still organizers and advocates, and we will continue uplifting community needs and voices, as that's our responsibility. That said, I'm just going to say this. We're here to declare that Black Lives Matter. We need you to step up in solidarity, use your power to change this. We demand answers from the city for the acts of police violence that still continue. And we're here to say that we need a people's budget. We need housing, we need healthcare, we need healthy food, good jobs, educational enrichment, small business resources, mental health care, and free public transit. We do not need more police. We need you to invest in our communities to uplift their public health.
Thank
The
you.
policing of our communities must end.
Thank you.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Hello, my name is Alexandra Kershon. I would like to speak on agenda item 1 for general public comments. I'm a constituent of Mitch Farrell's District 13. I've taken the time to fully review Mayor Garcetti's proposed budget for 2020 to 21, and I think we can all agree that the current budget not only fails to reflect the needs of our bleeding communities given recent events, but places a shield over...
Speaker, I don't think you're on agenda item 1, which is a Prop K matter. If you want to talk about the budget during general public comment for your minute, that's fine, but not on item 1 and general public comment.
All right, a general public comment is fine. Thank you. The issue is that the shield that we've placed on the LAPD makes it so that they cannot be held accountable for the actions or the way they de-escalate versus escalate confrontations. While the actual rates of crime in the city went up in 2019, so did LAPD salaries, and in our current budget cuts, we're seeing the defunding for vital LA departments like emergency management, not force feed the police, but care for our citizens, along with the defunding of the Ethics Commission, neighborhood empowerment, employee relations, economic and workforce development, city planning, the list goes on. If we want to talk about real-world impact, Councilman Krikorian, when the LAPD went on strike, we actually saw a drop in crime rates. So it's hard to understand how continued increases in their budgets at the expenses of our floundering community development sectors could be linked to the Los Angeles community that sees...
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on. Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on. Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
We actually saw a drop in crime rates, so it's hard to understand how increased...
Speaker, you need to turn down the volume on your other devices.
I did.
Thank you.
My name is Natalie Darren. I'd like to offer a general public comment.
Go ahead, you have 1 minute.
Okay. I'm just hoping that the City Council will address the comments of the LAPD Chief Michael Moore from yesterday. They were completely inappropriate, and it reflects a lack of judgment on our LAPD Chief, and it is something that should have been addressed by the mayor immediately, and it should not be brushed under the rug the way that it has now been. I find that in times like this, when people are allowed to speak to the public, they usually tend to speak how they mean. And him saying that in any way protesters are at fault for the death of someone who shouldn't have been under arrest in the first place, should have been offered any other means of de-escalating of the violence that was brought on him, shows that that is how the LAPD responds to these things. And it has been shown time and time again, and I don't understand how we as a public can keep expecting these.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on. Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
My name is Ariel Zucker, and I would like to speak on general public comment.
Go ahead.
Like the many Angelenos who have called in and marched in opposition and tweeted, I am demanding the mayor completely revise this white supremacist budget. The LAPD is an incredibly abusive and corrupt law enforcement department in this country, and the city has repeatedly sued over the LAPD's abusive power. And we're in the midst of a global health pandemic. Thousands remain unhoused and millions are at risk of joining those ranks. Black, brown, and poor institutionalized and unhoused bodies are at the greatest risk of being exposed to and dying from COVID-19. These are the same folks who are disproportionately impacted by LAPD's violence. The people have spoken. We want the city to invest in universal needs like quality housing for all, universal access to healthy food, financial and economic support, climate justice, free and quality public transit, public health, and mental health support. We want the city to divest from traditional policing. I demand Mayor Garcetti draft a people's budget that emphasizes care, not cops, and defunds the police.
Thank you.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Terry Cameron, item 7A.
Okay, you have 1 minute on your item. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm the general counsel for 6851 Sepulveda Boulevard, Inc. It's the owner of the property located at 6851 North Sepulveda Boulevard in Van Nuys. We very much appreciate the City Council's removal of the property from REAP. We do request, however, that the REAP department address, through a final reconciliation of our account, delays encountered in the removal process that were not attributable to the COVID pandemic. More specifically, we received final project sign-off from the Department of Building and Safety on January 30 of this year. It took almost 1 month for us to then learn from the Department of Building and Safety that the REAP removal process had been delayed by an expired 2017 permit completely unrelated to REAP. And that was despite our repeated multiple efforts and attempts to get information from the department and also from the REAP department. So thus, we ask that the City Council approve the REAP removal with a request to have the REAP department reconcile our account.
Sir, I don't want to cut you off, but the resolution is to do exactly what you're requesting, to remove this property from the rent escrow account program.
That is correct, but we also want to have the City Council direct the REAP department to work with the owner to reconcile the final REAP account to account for the delays that were avoidable, so that our account is not further reduced by that extra 1 month in time that there were these unwarranted delays.
All right, sir, just go ahead and call my office and we'll work it out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Item number 5717, and the rest of them, and general public comment.
Okay, you have 3 minutes for all the items and then 1 minute for general public comment. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. And thank you so much for these diatribes, you people sitting there praising yourself for the first hour. We have to sit here and listen to
Speaker,
this
would you please
crap.
move on to your agenda items? We're trying to get through as many
Yes,
people as
I
possible.
will. The city ethic number 5. That's the problem. You're not listening. Number 5, City Ethics Commission appointment by the mayor. Mr. Jeffrey Dar. I oppose this. I oppose the mayor being able to I impose a different system, recommend a different system. Where has the City Ethics Commission been? The mayor, this power to appoint anyone to the Ethics Commission should be taken from the mayor in totality. Where's the City Ethics Commission in the corruption of Huizar going to jail, Englander going to jail, Weston investigated, Lee being investigated, Price being investigated, Dawson being investigated? Where is the City Ethics Commission? I oppose this appointment. I oppose the mayor and his police state budget. You people, where is the City Ethics Commission in all of this? That Los Angeles City Council is a corrupt criminal organization. You should all be investigated. You're stealing HHH funds by the billions while people are sleeping on the street. Removing properties, number 7, removing properties from rent escrow account. This is it's good. There are two properties apparently in Marquise Dawson's district. That's good. These are being removed. He can't steal those properties. He is the king of black evictions in Los Angeles. Anybody that would praise this guy is a criminal. The street banners, number 17. You people are not listening to the people. Koretz talks about stopping people's civil rights protests. You need to resign, Koretz. Just shut up. People are out in the street because they want to be. Number 17 are the street banners. You want to give to money for street banners for the neighborhood council. This is not effective. People just riding by in the street. This is not effective advertising and a waste of money. You should put that money into direct mailers for the residents. You talk about, looters. You people are the looters for campaign contributions, spending all this, stealing the HHH funds for the homeless so you can get campaign contributions.
Sir, you want to move on to your general public comment? Go ahead.
Yes. The black community, one of the biggest problems the black community has is we have no representation. We just have these Toms, corrupt Toms, Ridley Thomas that brought that damn metro through the city, through the center of Crenshaw Boulevard, talk about destroying businesses, talking about the looters. You people are the effing looters. These businesses are destroyed. We have no representation. Wesson is a criminal, a corrupt criminal, and a direct reason why 60,000 people are homeless in the city of LA because him and corrupt pencil heads butcher Eric Garcetti. The people do not want a police state budget. We want schools, we want food, we want employment.
Thank you, sir.
8,000 steal the unemployment office.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
My name is Albert Farias. I'd like to speak on agenda item 17.
Go ahead. You have 1 minute.
Great. My name is Albert Farias, and I'm the chair of the Voices Neighborhood Council. Over the past 10 months, board members from the Voices Neighborhood Council have worked diligently developing a coordinated Neighborhood Council-wide outreach campaign that will not only encourage stakeholders to share their voice and be part of the solution to enhance our community, but it will also instill a sense of unity and pride in our neighborhood. The Voices Neighborhood Council, with stakeholder involvement, unanimously support the approval of the street banners. I want to thank Council Member Price for his continuous support of our efforts, as well as his staff members, Brittany Johnson and James Westbrook. And then lastly, I just want to thank all the council members for their comments earlier in this meeting. Thank you.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Good morning. My name is Kimberly Esbel, and I would like to speak on all items and make a general public comment.
Okay, you have 3 minutes for all the items and your 1 minute for general public comment. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, council members. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our concerns. As a resident of Mary's district, I would like to address the concerns of the mayor's proposed budget. As a mental health provider of our under-franchised community, I know the first-hand stressors of what the lack of proper housing and the displacement of our community to rising housing prices. The lack of
Madam Speaker, would you please get back on topic?
Yes. So I believe with addressing the proposed budget, redistributing the funds to properly accolade and
Speaker, you're talking about the budget. If you want to do that during general public comment, that's fine, but not for the agenda items. We want to move through as many people as we can. So do you want to go to your general public comment?
Okay, I'll make the general public comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I believe that the current proposed budget does not foresee and the unforeseen problems that COVID-19 will have on our community, especially the Black and Brown and immigrant populations. I'll also like to make a comment of asking Chief of Police Moore to resign due to his insensitive comments and gaslighting and victim shaming on protesting. I think as the face of Los Angeles, we should be a leader in how we defend and show solidarity for our Black community. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and I hope that with this, we'll be able to continue to support our families of the Black and Brown community. Thank you.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on. Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Hello, my name is Parker Whirling, and I'd like to make a general public comment. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Krikorian for explaining that the city budget is not set in stone. This is a special opportunity for LA to show the world how the city can take practical steps towards ending racism. It was stated that LA will not be able to accurately predict its revenue stream this year. You've all lamented the systemic racism that persists in our society and how you say how 99% of police officers involved in homicide are not charged, but especially considering the effects of COVID-19 on our community. Do you believe relief funds for dying small businesses, healthcare workers, and homelessness are far more vital for the city than allocating more than half of the city's budget to LAPD weapons and pay raises? Thank you.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
My name is DeAndre, and I would like to speak on the looters.
Can you repeat that one more time?
My name is DeAndre, and I would like to speak on the looters.
General public comment.
General public comment, go ahead.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead, Speaker.
Okay, yes. My name is DeAndre. I'm Black. I grew up in Michigan. Been living in Los Angeles for about 5 years. And I can honestly say that I actually feel safer in Los Angeles. The police officers in Michigan, they actually pull you over, ticket you for being Black. And I can honestly say I've been living here in Los Angeles for 5 years, and I haven't been ticketed in 5 years. Now, to speak to the looters, I'm not making any excuses for the looters, but we are upset with how Black people are being policed in our communities, Chief Moore. And we just want to be treated equal by the police officers. And I don't think that's too much to ask for. And I have to agree with the previous caller. Without the destruction, we would not be sitting here right now, Police Chief Moore. Speaking from the Black community, when you look at how that officer sat on Mr. Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and killed him, and you said the looters are partially to blame for that, Mr. Moore, that comment will stick with you forever. Not to mention how your officers came and arrested a Black family.
Thank you, sir.
Oops. Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
James Heron, general comment.
Okay, go ahead. You have 1 minute.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to leave a general comment saying that the budget that is being proposed by Garcetti in regards to the police budget being 54% of the city's budget is absolutely insane. And I think that if anybody thinks that this is okay on the city council, that there's going to be pretty aggressive tactics to get you removed from office. I mean, especially David Ryu, like you are going to be voted out in November, and it's going to happen if this budget gets pushed through. Thank you very much.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Hi, my name is Bryce Anderson. General comment.
Thank you.
Yes, you have 1 minute for your general public
Okay.
comment.
Thank you. I think I want to reiterate what a lot of other people have said. Just talking about, this budget in general and also these protests. I've been part of several of these protests. I have watched the LAPD honestly provoke riots with their reactions to these protests. That's not a position I would have believed myself having, 3 weeks ago, but like witnessing this on the street, like I really want, Chief Moore to understand that like the actions of his officers have made the looting worse, have made the public reaction worse. The words from City Hall have been frankly disgraceful. And the idea of allocating more funds to the police at this time is an abdication of duty on behalf of the city council. And I would like that to change. Thank you.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Joseph O'Cone, general public comment.
You have 1 minute. Go ahead.
So we've heard a lot of pretty words from council members today about how upset they are about the murder of George Floyd. But frankly, none of that means anything if you allow the budget to go into effect as it stands. Giving the amount of money that this mayor's budget allocates to the LAPD guarantees more murders of black people in this city by police officers. And the only way to prevent that is to dramatically defund the police department, to call for Chief Moore to resign, and to call off the LAPD, whose only job right now is to brutalize protesters. So I don't want to hear any more comments from any council members about how bummed they are about how things are going without action, because we're watching you and we can tell that you're all fake as shit. That's it. Bye.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Oh, hello.
Yes, please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
My name is Eileen Ramos, and I'd like to make a general public comment, mainly on the mayor's budget and how much of the talk today by the city council members, and particularly Ms. Nuri Martinez, was on Van Nuys and looting and saying how disastrous it is that this is happening when really it's all tied to police brutality, and the budget itself is going to fund the actions that people are protesting against to begin with. I think it's completely disrespectful to propose that 54% of the budget that could be redistributed to communities and our communities that are suffering, it should go towards us, and it should not go towards the police, that police lower income communities and people of color more than anything else. Thank you.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on. Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, sir. Please say your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
How are you operating this meeting?
So, Speaker, do you want to speak on an item? Or
what item are you on? We're supposed to take this an item at a time, aren't we?
No, Speaker, if you don't want to speak on a specific item or general public comment, we're going to move on.
Public comment, dude.
Thank you.
You don't even have it on your agenda, dude. Do you realize that? You guys are breaking the law again. I got the Board of Supervisors already on the ropes, okay? You're next. You're next.
Thank you, Speaker.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Am I next? It seems like there's a loop happening.
Yes, please go ahead, Speaker.
I'm next.
Yes.
Okay, Mickey Hernandez for general comment.
Okay, you have 1 minute. Go ahead.
I would really like you guys not to pass the proposed budget by Mayor Garcetti. I don't think that we need to give more money to the LAPD. I think that LAPD officers should not receive increases in salaries. I do not think that they should be allowed to receive militant equipment when there are protests happening. I don't think that the Pentagon should be allowed to bring them over here. I know that's a different federal thing, but LAPD should not accept federal aid in the form of militant equipment on their officers when we have protesters out there who are fighting for equality. I think that we should not have 54% of the budget or whatever the number is. I don't think that the budget should be as high as it is. And I do think that we should also have greater measures to stop developers from building buildings that keep homelessness rampant in our city.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
My name is Molly Schiffer. I'd like to make a general public comment.
You have 1 minute. Go ahead.
Thank you. So, respectfully to the City Council, I would like to ask all of the assembled council members why we should trust them in their honeyed words opposing racism and police brutality when every single member of the City Council has taken thousands of dollars from the Los Angeles Police Protective League PAC, which is the political arm of the police union, which helps protect cops against allegations of police brutality and violence. When Councilmember Kerkorian says that we're not budgeting through hashtag, that kind of disdain and dismissiveness of the obvious anger and fury expressed by caller after caller at this meeting regarding the city's budget is reflective of the fact that Councilmember Kerkorian has taken $7,098 from the Los Angeles Police Protective PAC over the course of his career in City Council. So I ask all of the callers to not trust the City Council when they tell you that they're taking your comments in due diligence because the Los Angeles Police Protective PAC.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Matt Nervy, my name.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Matt Nervy.
Speaker, we can't hear you clearly. Can you please speak up?
We still?
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Hi, my name is Giselle Thatcher. I'd like to make a general public comment. Specifically, the LA budget. Garcetti's police budget's unacceptable. It cannot be pushed through. This money needs to be going towards recovering small businesses and education and healthcare. LA can really show the country, how to lead responsibly and not just keep continuing this police state. The chief of police should resign due to his insensitive comments towards protesters supporting Black and Brown community. That's it. Hello?
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on. Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Great. My name is Mark, and I'd like to just make a general comment about using data analytics and increasing technology in the police force. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, but if you spoke a little louder, it would be helpful, please.
Okay.
That's
Is
good,
this,
thanks.
let me know this is better.
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I took a look at the budget. I have an MBA. I used to be in investment analytics. I took a look at the budget. There's a lot of overages in the LAPD allocations. If you can cap overtime allotment, contractual services, office expenses to previous year's level, you could save $55 million. I also think it would be very useful to create a data analytics team because crime is a multivariable, it's a very complex issue, and there's really no correlation between increased police presence and a decrease in crime. You could save tons of money, nearly in the sum of $800 million in salaries, benefits, pensions alone, and you can instead start implementing AI and robotic policing technology that has been used by members of our armed services.
Thank you, Speaker.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on. Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on. Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Chelsea for general comment or public comment.
You have 1 minute. Go ahead.
Hi. I just want to say that I also agree with everyone about that the previous comments about how the current budget, mayor's proposed budget, has too much allocation to the police and needs to be distributed more evenly to where it's most needed. And then I also wanted to say that the police really need to be actively saying that they're going to work with Black Lives Matter and NAACP. And the way that they've been conducting themselves at the protests has been very disgraceful. They've been forming a line in front of protesters, aggravating them, when I really think that they should be on the side, standing in front of businesses to stop looters, and then that doesn't stop people from walking and aggravating people. And then there should be a big collection of them walking with us. And so I just think...
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Actively saying this is...
Jordan, I'd like to speak on item 1 and then general comment.
And the way that they've been conducting themselves...
You have 1 minute for item number 1 and then your general public comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, number 1's the budget, right?
No, the budget is not on today's agenda.
I mean, everyone's talking about it.
Yeah, they're talking about it during general public comment.
Okay, so we can still comment on it there.
Yeah. You want
okay, that's fine.
General public comment? Go ahead. You have 1 minute.
Okay.
Thanks, Speaker. Please go ahead.
Jordan, I'd like to speak on item 1 and then general comment. Thank you.
Go ahead, Speaker. I think you're listening on your other device. Yeah. If you turn that down, it'll help.
Yeah, let me go ahead and do that.
Okay, thank you.
I don't hear them on the phone. Okay, hi. I just wanted to talk about the fact that there's a quote that your president of your police union said the other day that was kind of alarming, where he said that the job of our police has changed. You know, the work's evolved. You know, they're now therapists, drug treatment counselors, social workers, EMTs, among other things. And, you know, why are our police being stretched thin for all those responsibilities when we can be putting this budget towards those jobs instead? Why aren't we sending EMTs out whenever there's a concern? Why are we putting people out there who are trained in combat and things like that and who have a weapon on them to these calls where that is not necessary? Like whenever there's a domestic violence dispute, maybe they can be in the background, but they shouldn't be on the front line. With our homeless community, they should not be the first line of contact. The social workers should be. We really need to restructure our budget and actually provide services and care, not just send the police to do everything when they can't even juggle all that responsibility. It's unfair to us and to them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Are you speaking to me?
Yes, please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
George Bazzetti, public comment.
You have 1 minute.
First, it's illegal to ask our name. Go check out the Board of Supervisors. Special agendas. The DA is going to be prosecuting them. And you too for running your illegal meetings. You can't ask our name. The police are out of control. What's wrong with you people? I've given you the felonies of the LAPD erasing the audio to the 5/5/15 Police Commission meeting. I've read the letter in public from Chief Beck where he says he can kill anybody he wants against the DOJ agreement, commit any crime against me that they want, and admit that they prevented my legal, constitutionally required phone calls every time I get arrested and said, you can break the law anytime you want. And when I read that at your police commission meeting, I was chased out by 40 cops. Now, I've given this to all you city council members, and you don't care about...
Thank you, Speaker.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on. Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Hi, this is Amanda Miguel, and I'm speaking for general public comment.
Go ahead. You have 1 minute.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm a constituent of Council District 1. I wanted to give comments on the mayor's proposed budget. I understand when this was presented, this proposed budget was prior to the current uprisings in our city this past week. And with that in mind, I believe the council, on the agenda, had asked that during general public comment, what can the council do within their jurisdiction? I ask you as the council whose job is to approve this budget, to make your recommendations, to make amending motions, to do so in a way that acknowledges the pain that is being felt deeply today, every day, by Black and Brown communities. It's difficult to speak this out, but I just want to spit it out. This budget is not reflective of those ideals and needs right now. There's too much pain. It's difficult to look at more than half of our budget going to a system that systemically tears us down.
Thank you.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Valerie Albicker for general public comment.
You have 1 minute. Go ahead.
I wish that City Council would not pass the mayor's proposed budget. As is, it funds LAPD at over half of the city's budget. I ask the City Council review and really listen to the people by reviewing the People's Budget LA, which service focuses on servicing people, not police. If you want to really represent Los Angeles citizens and community, you need to listen to our demands, which are being expressed in this petition to review and deny the current mayor's proposed budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Hello, my name is Alex, and I just want to leave a general comment.
Go ahead. You have 1 minute.
So I just want to remind the council members that your purpose is to be there for the people. You were elected because the people believed you would listen and abide by their needs. And I'm sure, or I hope that by now you have come across the several videos exposing your police for initiating violence and mistreating your citizens. And by allocating 54% of the budget to the LAPD, you are actively encouraging this violence and making it clear to your citizens that you do not care about their health, you do not care about their education. And I just beg the council to take this as an opportunity to make a stance against racism and the systematic injustices that have plagued our country and our city for far too long. Thank you.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on. Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Jeff Torres, public comment.
You have 1 minute. Go ahead.
Okay, Michael Moore just blamed the murder of George Floyd on looters, and he took his comment back. But I mean, it's weird. Is he a time traveler? I don't understand how he did that. How he can blame that? Those are completely not things that happened. Your budget is allocating half of our money to go to police force, and if you look at the streets right now, the reason that we don't want that to happen is exactly for what they're doing. Someone else said they should be blocking businesses, not streets. They shouldn't be antagonizing protesters and beating them. I was in there, and if I would have just watched the news, I would have thought these people are inciting these things. It was the police officers. What you're telling your constituents, you're giving these beautiful speeches, but what you're actually doing is making a budget that enforces that kind of abuse of your own citizens. So if your constituents are telling you, everyone that's called has said the same thing, the people's budget is what's important. You need to invest in these communities so that you don't need to invest in people to beat the crap out of people, but you get to educate them and give them resources so that they can succeed. That's what you should be doing. That's what you should be concerned about. So
Thank you.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Jennifer and public comment.
Go ahead. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. I just want to start out saying that I'm a bit disturbed that you can outfit police officers for combat but weren't able to pay for higher Zoom licensing. I would be personally reprimanded for my job if my preparations for an important meeting were so lacking. Moving on, the budget being proposed by the mayor is not reflective of what our community wants or needs. There's a deep need in this city for affordable housing, social programs, better public health funding, and public transportation. Almost 54% of the budget is going to inflated pensions for paid public servants who are currently shooting peaceful protesters with rubber bullets and throwing tear gas at our tax-paying residents. I'm asking you to defund the police and adopt the people's budget. Thank you.
Please state your name and what item you'd like to speak on.
Hi, it's Eric Previn. I'd like to speak on all items in general public comment.
Go ahead, Mr. Previn.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, these are trying times. I wanted to reference Prop K. We have a couple items with Prop K. Let's remind ourselves, Prop K does not stand for Krikorian. And the people and residents of Studio City who've been tuned in to the adjustments that have been made and the plans that are underfoot to put a oversized structure in our last bits of open space are not for this kind of a plan. And it's very worrisome that the money is being moved around in various ways at this time when people are virtually blocked from meaningful participation. There's so many things that we can put to good use and can spend that money wisely. We've discussed how Mr. Harris Dawson's community is extremely park poor, and to put a green, no matter how green, a building into a little bit of open space is just a terrible idea. I want to reference that Jeffrey Dar, who's I think it's fair to say he's just a great part of the city family, which raises questions about why he would be serving on the Ethics Commission, because I think that we should really have fresh eyes, and I think that Jeffrey Dar is a good lawyer, I suppose, and he can get things done at City Hall, but I don't see that as the kind of guy. It's almost like he's a facilitator, which is not what we really want at our Ethics Commission. We want higher standards. I also note again here that we have finally the refund to Facebook. I mean, if that does not foment outrage, why in the world are we giving money back to Facebook, who have, along with Google, systematically virtually destroyed local journalism and all journalism? I mean, no disrespect to the New York Times, who are touting themselves. We have very little coverage, and now what we have is crazy coverage of, as Mr. Harris Dawson was referencing, the lowest, most horrible little, crimes all over the place, which are nothing compared to the loss of a human life, which is why the people have uprose and why we have people very, very concerned about the future, not just in Los Angeles, but across America. And, I just think that those kinds of things, it's amazing how we managed to process during these horrific times some kind of a refund for Facebook while people are struggling. And I know that Council President Martinez, you made some remarks about how there's a misunderstanding about what the city's budget is and what it isn't. Let me be very clear.
So, Mr. Previn, we seem to be off of the agenda items. Do you want to go to general public comment?
Well, yeah. Is that what the timing is? Let me go to general. No, I'm going to go to general public comment as a courtesy to you, Paul, because I know you're doing your best.
Thank you, Mr. Previn.
Okay. Keep quiet. The public's participation in the public hearings on the budget are critical. And though Councilmember Krikorian said some nice words and the council president expressed some weak outrage about the fact that people care deeply about how the city spends its resources, especially at this time when there are highly questionable things happening all over the place, there should be a posted list of when the hearings are and why people have not been provided that information. And, every year, Councilmember Krikorian thanks everybody for yet another victory because they've had shorter budget hearings. The goal of budget hearings is not to shorten them. It's to hear from your constituents who, I have to say, we're at an all-time high of public mistrust of their local and their national officials. So to be doing anything other than opening your books and providing the opportunities for public scrutiny is just a great, great disappointment. Now, that said, you didn't create
Thank you, Mr. Previn. Okay, members, that concludes public comment and general public comment for today's meeting. Let's go ahead and continue items 2 and 6 with the amendment as amended. We're going to continue both items until June 3rd. Without objection, that will be the order. Members, let's go ahead and vote on the remaining items. We're going to be... Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
And the remaining items are items 1, 3 through 5, and 7 through 18.
Let's go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Bonin.
Bonin, aye.
Buscaino.
Aye.
Cedillo.
Cedillo, aye.
Harris Dawson.
Yes.
Koretz.
Aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Martinez.
Aye.
O'Farrell.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Rue.
Aye.
Wesson.
Aye.
14 ayes, these matter pass.
Okay, members, are there any verbal motions that you would like to introduce? Any verbal motions? Okay, seeing none, Madam Clerk, has any written motions been submitted? Go
Yes.
ahead and read those into the record.
The first is a motion by Council Member Harris Dawson, and it is referred to the Housing Committee. And it is relative to instructions to the Housing and Community Investment Department to increase previous loan commitments for the development of a mixed-use transit-oriented development for low-income families known as Roland Curtis Gardens, located at 1077 West 38th Street. Is there a second to this motion?
Second. Seconded by Ms. Rodriguez. Next motion.
The second motion is a motion by Councilmember Blumenfield. It is referred to the Budget and Finance Committee, and it is relative to a request to restore, without funding, 4 resolution authority positions in the fire department for illegal cannabis enforcement that were deleted in the mayor's 2020-21 proposed budget. Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
I believe that was seconded by Councilmember Blumenfield.
No.
No, that was my motion.
Oh, by Councilmember Koretz?
Yes.
And those are all the verbal motions, Council President.
Okay, thank
Sorry,
you.
I had one then. I thought the clerk had my motion.
I'm sorry, Ms. Rodriguez, did you have a verbal motion?
Yes, I did. I apologize. I thought the clerk had it in advance.
Okay, no problem. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. Given the circumstances of what has evolved over the last few days, my moving clause is I therefore move that the Chief of Police report with an after-action report of the events leading up to and the police department's actions during the period of the civil unrest that began on May 29th, 2020, in response to the killing of George Floyd.
Second. Second.
Okay, any other verbal motions, members? Okay, Madam Clerk, what's before us now?
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Posted and referred. Members, are there any announcements? Any adjourning motions? Okay, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, and please.
The achievements as we begin to get back out very slowly, very carefully, very deliberately.
A lot of our students have a lot of other things on their mind, especially helping their families, especially if their parents have lost their job. So I think they're dealing with a lot.
We're just trying to give them some positivity and bring some love and joy to them because it's been a hard time for them.
One way to safely communicate our hearts to these students is by driving around through a caravan where we can follow the safety protocols of social distancing and still communicate our hearts to them and let them know that we miss them and we're thinking about them.
Different types of organizations have stepped up to help Angelenos, and more keep coming. This week, we got to see Homies Unidos work in action alongside Councilmember Herb Wesson and Machete himself, Danny Trejo.
Doing what we've been doing the last 5 weeks, trying to help people in need. I'm so blessed to be here with my friend Danny Trejo, who really is the person that made this happen, and we're just helping people, and that's what we're doing.
This is beautiful. This is what we're supposed to do. We do this every Wednesday, and you know, the line just keeps getting bigger.
We started a community response initiative to go and feed our neighborhoods in the area of Koreatown specifically. Every Wednesday we're here providing food to over 250 people. We're getting donations for different folks today from Danny Trejo. Wherever we can get some stuff, we bring it.
We gotta keep fighting. We gotta listen to the people that have our interests at heart, not their re-election. Remember that. We gotta listen to the people